Hello, nobody. So, follow up on yesterday's little conversation we had. Uh, Trying to think about sports rivalries more, and I am trying to think about it in terms of not necessarily on the ice or on the field if you're playing anything other than hockey, which you shouldn't be. Um, but more so the interaction between fans, which is really what I'm curious about. Um, and specifically even interactions outside of the arena or the rink, because that's when things get hostile. It was during the heat of the moment, but like outside of that, um, I like yesterday. I have a big rivalry with Northern Michigan, specifically with their hockey team. Um, Anytime outside of the hockey rink, I've never had a bad experience with a Northern student. I mean, if anything, the tech students are the bigger dicks in the situation usually because they're the ones who are like, oh well, good luck finding a job with your degree. Your degree sucks. All your idiots. Oh okay, they're doing liberal arts majors. We're STEM. We're so good. But every time that I've had an interaction, other with an actual human being in a regular social situation, with someone from Northern, they've been just they're people. They're just regular people. They just chose to go to a different school than I did, and that's fine. And that kind of breaks the hatred. But people want to hate. And part of it, when it comes to sports at least, is because it makes it feel so much better to win. Because nothing feels better than going into to Northern's rink and beating them. Because it's beating those guys, the bad guys. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys, and we beat them. And that's an easy narrative. And it's something that we've grown up since we were kids with that kind of narrative of good versus evil, and we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, and we need to win. And so it's so satisfying to have that kind of thing. But really, I don't think that's the case. I think that's too simple. And the reason this bothers me so much, I finally realized this after yesterday's conversation. The reason this bothers me so much is that it's the same. Not this isn't necessarily an issue, but it's the same line of thinking that gets us into issues with this. Take this with a grain of salt. I'll explain how this all works later in this. But the same way that you end up with Christians who hate gay people, or you end up with atheists who think that all religious people are idiots who hate science, and that's clearly not the case. There definitely are people in both those groups who do those things. There's the Westboro Baptist Church who hates gay people, but there's a lot of Christians who are just fine with it. They don't care. It's not a big deal. And there's a lot of religious people who are scientists and believe in science, but also think, hey, maybe there's something beyond science. Not beyond science in a way that it's like, oh, it's better or bigger than science, but like the point of religion is something that is supernatural, something that is not part of what we can explain, and that we should try and explain what we can't explain and explain the regular world, but maybe there's something more. Okay, sure. But they don't, go and say, oh, well, science is bad, and, we shouldn't vaccinate our kids, and chemtrails falling from the sky, turning the frogs gay, all that crazy stuff. That's, but that's the issue that you end up with this us versus them mentality, is you start to have your own echo chamber where it confirms your thoughts, and you have to find an enemy, and you pick someone and you say, oh, well, they clearly disagree with everything that we're saying. And so you end up with, you want to make a villain because it's so much better to have a pure villain than it is to have people who are complex. Because complex people don't make good stories. That's not true. They make great stories. They make hard stories. You can't have a simple story where the villain is complex and there's reasons why they do what they do. And I see a lot of that. People are starting to figure that out when it comes to, good versus evil. That's not really a thing. But they're still holding on to it in these, the sports rivalries and in like geographic things like states and or countries and stuff like that. And it's the same mentality, and I still think that it's hurtful, even if it's in a thing like sports that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I don't like holding on to something that we've determined is not helpful. It's not a good thing, so why are we still holding on to it? That's what I got. Bye.